So I think today is the day. Today is the last day of our childhood moments. We're going to start with this one called Runaway. I hope this isn't a bad chapter. It was early and you were on your way to the playground. Lizzie planned on joining you there later. You weren't sure what she was busy with right now. Older kid stuff, you imagined. That was okay. What was forefront in your mind was if Cove might be free to come too. As you walked the familiar street, wondering how you might find your neighbor, he appeared right in front of you, almost as if he was a mind reader. Hi, Cove, can you come to the playground with me? No, sorry. Cove looked strangely serious. It had to be an even bigger deal than whatever mystery thing Lizzie had to do. Leaving Ollie. What? Where? He shifted and your gaze was drawn to the backpack slung over his shoulders. Cove liked to stuff things into his pockets from what you've seen, but people sometimes carried bags with them. It hadn't been very attention-worthy until now. The pack was decorated with cartoon waves and dolphins. He gripped one of the straps tightly with his good hand. I just wanted you to know. Cove didn't glance up and meet your eyes. You started to grow worried. I don't get it, but where are you going? Oh, can I go too? I'll come with you. But where are you going? He didn't answer. It was as if you hadn't said anything. I'll come back, though, sometime. I don't know when, but we can do stuff then. He directed a fragile smile your way. Without another word, Cove turned on his heel and started to walk away. See you when you're done. Wait. You couldn't say anything else. I would say wait. He kept going. His focus wasn't on you anymore. What was that about? You watched as his back grew smaller and smaller. When you realized that you were still standing in the middle of the sidewalk, you thought about your earlier plan of playing at the park. Suddenly, it didn't seem as fun anymore, not without Cove. But it wasn't like you could force him to play with you. He had things to do. You went to play at the park, you stayed there. I stay here. You could play at the park some other time. It wasn't like it was going anywhere, and you couldn't bring yourself to leave like this. You didn't move from your spot. You just continued to look on quietly. It didn't take long to realize that he was just going up the street. You were positive there was nothing good over there. Not the park, or the beach, or the store street, or his house, or anything. He was new. He might not know what you did. You jogged down the street to catch up to him. You slowed down once you reached his side. He glanced at you from the corner of his eye and frowned. Go away, Ollie. I just wanted to say you're going the wrong way. There aren't any places the way you're going. His mouth was twisted further. He didn't appreciate your warning. I'm still going. Why? What are you doing? Walking. But why do you have to walk that way? Hope let out a deep sigh. You got the feeling that he was starting to get mad at you. Told you I'm leaving. I'm gonna be gone for a while. Stopped pushing and let him go. I still want to go with you. Can't. Why not? Hope came to the sudden stop. You almost kept walking ahead of him because you weren't expecting it. My dad doesn't know. If you come, you'll get in trouble when he finds out. You felt a knot start to grow in your stomach. You're not supposed to be leaving? His expression was grave. He shook his head. Dad isn't home right now. I left him a letter so he won't get confused when he gets back. But you can't tell anybody about this, okay? You can pretend you never saw me. Okay, bye. I won't tell anyone that you're going. I still want to go. I don't care if I get in trouble. I have to tell someone. Don't do it all by yourself. Cove's hard expression wavered. You could tell that he hadn't expected you to say that. Really? You don't think it's a bad idea or something? No, it's like we're going on an adventure. It's not a big deal, right? We're gonna have fun. I don't know, but if you're doing it anyway, I should too. Might be a bad idea, but... His lips curved into a smile. Okay, you can come. You grinned, pleased that he gave in so easily. You thought it might take longer since he was so set on going alone. You turned a bit in the middle of the sidewalk and so did Cove when he saw. He pointed over your shoulder with a thumb. Let's go to my house first. I can get my backpack. We can't. Sorry. If we're gonna be away, I better take some stuff. It's not that. I don't want our parents to catch us. Your moms could think it's weird if we have bags. They might ask. We don't have a lot of time anyway. He motioned to his backpack, patting it with his hand. Its front bulged out slightly.
It's okay.
Don't worry, I packed snacks. It'll be alright. You wished you could bring your backpack along just to be safe, but his explanation made sense. Alright, we can leave. Cove smiled. He seemed to be in much better spirits than when you first ran into him. You were glad he wasn't always this upbeat. That was fine, though, otherwise he wouldn't be Cove, but you liked seeing him smile. Cove took the first step, and you mirrored him. As one, both of you ran up the street. You were off into unknown territory. You ran through the first few neighborhoods like that, your feet pounding on concrete. Whenever one of you got tired, you'd take a break for a minute. The moment there was a sound, you'd be off again, in case someone you knew might realize what you were up to. Because of how cautious you were, the two of you didn't run into anyone, not even other kids enjoying their summer. It was like you had suddenly become criminals, always worried if someone was on your tail. As tense as it was, you were still glad when you got the opportunity to take a proper break. Cove waved for you to stop once you got out of the residential district. The houses disappeared, broad storefronts taking their place. You were all the way in the business part of town. This was the first time you'd come here on foot. Before, one of your moms always drove you to this place in their car. Cove leaned up against a nearby tree and wiped sweat off his forehead. You braced your hands on your knees, breathing hard, and you looked over the road ahead. We're so far. A strange expression flickered across Cove's face at your words. Before he nodded, you spoke again, still huffing. My mom's bringing me and Lizzie here for shopping. Yeah, I've never been here before, not without Dad. He looked pleased by that. We're doing good. It's not even nighttime. You were starting to feel good about it too. You were still unsure. You thought it was right to have gone with Cove, but being so far from your neighborhood made you feel even more weird about what was happening. Clearly, Cove wanted to keep going. For how long, though? You couldn't want to keep walking forever. Cove slid his backpack off and unzipped it. You watched curiously as he stuffed a hand in and searched for something. To your delight, he pulled out 2 juice boxes and offered one to you. Here. Thank you, I was getting thirsty. The two of you took a moment to unwrap the straws and poke them into the special circle part of the box. The juice was warm, but still good. You sighed contentedly after your first sip. Your throat was beginning to ache from how dry it had gotten. It really had been a while since this all started. As you took another sip of your juice, your gaze drifted to Cove's bag. He hadn't closed it yet. What else is in there? There's still a few juice boxes left. He peered inside and began to list off items as he spotted them. Got some snacks from the kitchen too. Chips, muffins, bananas, candy. That was already a lot, but he kept excavating more. I also took a couple clothes, a flashlight, first aid kit from my dad's bathroom, and a blanket. Oh, and some money my dad gave me a while ago that I haven't spent yet. Your mouth made a small O halfway through his lengthy list. You brought a lot of stuff. I wouldn't have thought to grab a flashlight or a first aid kit. I told you I was going away. He didn't know what to say to that. The little smile Cove had been wearing earlier was gone by now, like it had never been there in the first place. Oops. I did not read what that said. Alright, you watched as he zipped up his backpack and slipped it on. He started walking without a single glance over to you, though he did still take small, unhappy sips of his juice. For some time, the two of you went forward in complete silence. The more ground you covered, the more serious Cove seemed to become. He hadn't looked at you or said anything in a while. He'd just taken your empty juice box from you and stowed it away in his bag. That was it. You knew there had to be more to all this. The sun dislodged itself from its place in the sky, dipping lower and lower. The street lamps came on. It was as if they were anticipating nightfall. Kept walking, tried to convince him to go back. I'm gonna go with keep walking just for now. I just don't want to tick him off. Even if it was late, you weren't ready to turn back and knew there was Cove. The two of you continued to trudge past the storefront. Silence fell over you again. You had no idea how to break it, or if you even wanted to. People had said this was a really tiny town, but to you it felt absolutely gigantic. Eventually, the business part of town ended too. There was no sidewalk anymore, only a long expanse of road. You walked on the grass instead. Not even that was enough to stop him. Onward was the only option. Your journey stubbornly continued. The hunch you had about Cove's possible destination soon became a certainty. There was only one way out of town, after all. Your feet hurt, you were tired. The two of you didn't have any parents with you, but somehow you had reached the very edge of Sunset Bird. That's what the sign told you. You had lived in Sunset Bird forever, and it was a very rare occasion that you'd see the sign. Most everything in your life happened inside the city limits. The endless road ahead seemed scary in a way. It paralyzed you. You glanced at Cove. You had made it here just before nightfall, but now what? Outside of town, there was nothing. How would he get to where he wanted to go? Cove, however, didn't falter. He kept walking. As he neared the sign, he finally stopped. That was a relief. He took off his backpack and sat down, crossing his legs beneath him. You lowered yourself beside the boy as he zipped his bag open and rummaged through it again.
Whoa.
What snack do you want? You were almost taken aback by his voice. It had been a while since you last heard it. Pursing your lips, you recalled the snacks that he had listed off earlier. I want a muffin. He pulled out 2 muffins. After passing you your food, he took a big bite out of the top of his muffin. He peered over at your friend. He started at the path still ahead with a solemn expression. He turned away. The sun had set some time after both of you finished eating. Now it was dark, apart from the faint moonlight. You watched as Cove grabbed the flashlight from his bag. What are we gonna do? Sleep out here? I guess. He was speaking defensively again. Cove flicked on the flashlight. A beam of light cut through the darkness, weakly illuminating the area he sat in. You pulled your knees up to your chest, wrapping your arms around them. You weren't cold. Summer nights were still sort of warm. You just felt like it. Is it okay if I ask something? Cove's focus didn't waver from the road, but he nodded. Why do you want to leave Sunset Bird so bad? At first, Cove was quiet. You started to think he wouldn't say anything. Then he spoke. My mom called today to check up on me and stuff. She asked what Sunset Bird was like and how I was doing. It was okay. But when I asked if she'll come here, Mom said she couldn't. I can't go back either, not right now. She has to move to somewhere else first. Bill glared at the ground. His voice cracked as he continued. Why can't I even see her anymore? He used his uncasted arm to rub both of his eyes. I'm gonna go myself. I don't need anyone to take me. How are you gonna get to your mom's place? Bad idea. This was all too much and you started to cry. Do you know the directions to your old house? You're being selfish. I'm gonna ask how is he gonna even get to his mom's place. He just wanted to see his mom. Maybe he would have had the idea to run away too if he were Cove. But that doesn't mean it'll work. I'll walk there. I brought supplies. Isn't it really far? Cove was silent for a moment. You poked a hole in his perfect plan. Then he shook his head, like he was trying to clear it. When he spoke some more, it was mostly to himself. If I don't go see Mom, then she's... Fresh tears glistened in Cove's red-rimmed eyes. He stubbornly tried to blink them away, but they slipped down his cheeks. You frowned at the sight. No matter what, you hated seeing him cry. What happened? Mom doesn't call that much, and I haven't seen her in so long. Cove hiccuped, wiping his face with the back of his arm. His glasses got shoved up awkwardly as a result. If I don't go, she'll be gone. She'll forget about me. She wouldn't do that. How do you know? She's your mom. She loves you. Your mom always said that, so it must be true for Cove's mom, too. Cove sniffled. He seemed conflicted. I'm not sure if that's right. You were at a standstill. Everything will be okay if we just go home. We can't stay here forever and we can't go out there. We've got to go back. We'll stay out here. I'm not going to go back. I'm going to say this one. Cove's brows furrowed, a scowl appearing on his lips. He turned away from you. You stared at his back. You couldn't just stop. He's Cove. After a few minutes of sullen silence, Cove twisted back around. He wouldn't look you in the eye. Okay, let's go. I don't want you to get in trouble. I don't want something bad to happen. He was doing it for you? That gave you a warm feeling inside, even if you wished he didn't want to leave in the first place. And that was that. Together you walked away from the exit sign. Your feet hurt a lot by this point, and you were so tired, but you'd convinced him you were bringing Cove home, and that's what mattered. On the long walk back, it was the only thanks to the occasional street lamp and faint moonlight that you could see in the dark night. You were content to stick close together. Sometimes your drowsy walking caused one of you to almost bump into the other. The back of your hand brushed his. Held his hand, noticed Cove took hold of your hand. Shook your head to try waking yourself up. We hold hand. You reached out for his hand, it slipped into yours easily. His palm was warm. Cove glanced at you, looking surprised. Then he smiled, his fingers curled around the back of your hand. Two of you continued down the street, hand in hand. You weren't sure how much time passed. All you knew was that one moment you were fighting in the drooping of your eyelids while shuffling near Cove on the sidewalk, and the next you were snapped back to attention by the blaring beep of a horn. Cove froze. You whipped around to see a car approaching you. It was difficult to make out who it was. The headlights were so blinding. Instead of continuing down the road, the car slowed near where you sat. The window rolled down, revealing the face behind the wheel. It was very familiar. Mom! She shouted back, and not just because there was some distance between you and her. Where have you kids been? I've been looking everywhere for you. I was trying to help Cove. She stopped looking at you, instead staring hard straight ahead. Both her hands were gripping the wheel. In turn, Cove gripped your hand tighter. This was hard to face. Guilt ate you up from the inside. Get in. Let's get you two home. That at least made her showing up worth it. Your feet were aching like crazy from all the walking you'd done today. You yanked open the side door, slipped inside the back seat, then clambered over so Cove had enough room to climb in too. You followed in wordlessly, tucking his backpack near his feet. Mom looked at you and Cove from the rearview mirror. The two of you had us extremely worried. That wasn't a good thing to do, not at all. Shamefaced, you both nodded as one. Sorry, Mrs. Best. Sorry, Mom. She softened immediately, not enough to actually let it go, though. You have to apologize to everyone else, too. With that, Mom started the car up again and you were off. For the rest of the car ride, no one said anything. You thought all of you were pretty tired. In fact, you must have dozed off at some point because you woke up to the sound of the engine stopping. When you opened your eyes, you realized Cove was looking over at you. He was tense. We're back. You yawned and got out of the car. Cove came out after, putting his backpack on again. Mom locked the door and motioned you two towards the house. She opened the front door and let you go in first. Mommy appeared quickly. She must have been waiting nearby. There was a phone in her hand. It worried you, thinking about who she might have been talking to. The tight line of her shoulders relaxed when she saw you and Cove. Oh, thank goodness you found both of them. Yes, I did. They were walking down the main street together. What were you doing there this time of night? Do you have any idea how far that is? How unsafe? You peeked at Cove. He still looked exhausted. His eyes were puffy and there were dried tear tracks stuck to his cheeks. I had to see my mom. Only didn't want me to go alone. Your moms shared a look. They weren't sure what it meant, but they always did that. You wondered if they could read each other's minds. Since they were communicating telepathically, you stole a glance around the house. Lizzie wasn't anywhere in sight. Where was she? She must have finished whatever she was doing that morning ages ago. Where's Lizzie? Your sister's in her room, fast asleep. The same way you should have been. She went out earlier to look for the two of you when she accidentally found out that you were both missing. She tried to pretend otherwise, but you made her sick with worry. Said she checked all the hiding places she could think of, but couldn't find either of you. You and Cove exchanged remorseful glances at that. Mommy noticed the discomfort. You two must be sleepy. You can sit down wherever you like. Mommy smiled warmly and motioned to the living room. Cove looked up at her, then lumbered over. You followed close behind. The living room wasn't far, separated by a wall, so you heard your mom's talking softly. He wanted to go see his mother. Dang. That explains it at least. Still, I'm not sure it excuses it. So dangerous to go off into town like that. He's having a hard time right now. You can't expect a child to handle it maturely. True, it can't be helped. But that's enough of that. We should tell Cliff and the others that he's here before the panic gets out of hand. There should be riots. There could be riots. I'll call, then go to the front to tell everyone's still out there. You keep an eye on the kids. Make sure they don't take any more trips today. Got it, hun. Cove just sat there on the couch, setting his backpack down beside him. He stared at his hands. This is so weird. What is? Everyone was looking for me. They all know I tried to leave. I don't want to run away and knock them back this time so I don't have to see them again. Say, please never run away again. Cove looked guilty for even suggesting that, despite it not being serious. I won't, not for real. Before you could say anything else, the front door opened. Your mom was back with Mr. Holden close behind her. He made a beeline for the couch, his gaze trained on his son. Cove? Oh, God, are you alright? Shades of his hair had fallen out of his ponytail. His eyes were darkened like he'd been crying, too. Cove stared up at his dad, his own eyes wide behind the frames of his glasses. He really hadn't expected it to be such a big deal. I'm okay. Good. That's good. I'm so glad to hear that. He clasped a hand on his son's shoulder, attempting a smile, but the corners of his lips twitched in spasm, as if they wanted to wilt into a frown instead. Cove seemed to have that effect on him. Mr. Holden turned to you, still smiling weakly. I'm so happy you're all right too, Ollie. Then he looked at your moms. Thanks for your help, as always. He laughed pitifully.
Sorry.
And I'm very sorry for ruining your afternoon with this. I can't apologize enough.
It's okay.
It was no trouble, Cliff, really. It couldn't be helped, in a way. Something was bound to happen sometime. Besides, he wasn't the only one who decided it was a good idea to disappear today. Exactly. We're just happy the kids are safe and sound. Not for the first time that day you recalled your original meeting with Cove. He had run away then, too. Only not as far as he had today. Cove must have had a similar thought because he mumbled an apology. Sorry, Dad, I won't leave anymore, I promise. Some life seemed to return to Mr. Holden thanks to his promise. This time around, his smile was more genuine. It's a relief to hear. Next time you feel like running off, come to me first, okay? We can talk about it. I'm here for you. Cove nodded. His dad reached out and mused his hair playfully. Although he made a face, Cove didn't try to dodge the hand as he usually did. Let's go home, bud. Bet you're as tired as I am. Mr. Holden took over carrying Cove's backpack, still clasping a free hand on his son's shoulder when he stood up from the couch. The five of you walked over to the front door so you could see them off. Mr. Holden thanked your moms profusely at least 3 more times before he walked out of the door. Cove was made to follow. But he stopped and turned to you before stepping through the threshold. Thanks, Ollie. You're welcome, Cove. Tiny smile flitted across his lips. There and then gone. Hug. Before he was gone, you reached over and gave him a hug goodbye after a hard day. He held you back more tightly than you could have anticipated. And you almost squeaked out a noise. I'm glad you're here. His embrace was tight but brief. He let go as soon as he said what he had wanted to. And with that, Cove left. Mommy closed the door behind him. You were practically dead on your feet at that point. Your fatigue must have been obvious because your mom sent you right to bed with no more discussion on what happened that day. Once your head hit the pillow, your eyes slipped closed on their own. Your eyelids were so heavy you couldn't open them again until the next morning. You woke up much more at ease than you had felt when you were last conscious. It almost was like it was a dream. But it definitely wasn't. Your mom's faces when you saw them assured that. After breakfast, you were sat down and your family went over yesterday's events in full. They were none too pleased that you joined Cove despite knowing that he wanted to leave. As punishment, your moms took away your TV privileges for the next few days. Lizzie was annoyed that she couldn't watch her shows with you around, but she adjusted. Whenever you expressed disappointment, your moms reminded you that they weren't punishing you for no reason. It was dangerous to go out on your own so late and without telling anyone. You could have gotten hurt or worse. As upset as you were, you understood. Mr. Holden talked to Cove about what happened too. He didn't know what was said exactly, but Mr. Holden forgave Cove immediately. He didn't do anything to punish Cove for running away. He blamed no one but himself for Cove's desire to leave home. You caught your moms discussing it once in hushed tones, frowning at each other. It was pretty serious. There was a word used you hadn't heard before, self-flagellation, but there wasn't anything they could do to change Mr. Holden's mind. Your neighbors stopped you and Cove often for the next week or so to express their concerns and disapproval of the event. Still, as they always did, days continued to pass, so did talk about Cove running away. Things eventually returned to normal as they had. Summer kept going, and you kept having experiences you shared with Cove. Aw, well, I'm glad that they made it back home. That was spooky. Alright, we've got one more sleepover. Okay. Alright, kids, we're done with dinner. Come to the table. Your stomach grumbled right on time, as if it had heard your mom's words. You halted your game and looked over. Mom was almost done setting the table. She was walking around the mahogany wood in the process of putting down cutlery. Mommy was still in the kitchen, humming under her breath as she turned off the stove and put empty pots in the sink to wash. From beside you, Lizzie stirred, uncrossing her legs and standing up. She stretched her arms above her head. Finally, I'm ready to eat. Then she cast a sly glance in your direction. You recognized that look. Last one of the tables, a rotten egg. I haven't... But it was too late. Lizzie had already bolted towards the kitchen. Tried to catch up, stayed sitting, yelled out to her, threw a cushion. Grabbing one of the cushions from the sofa, you threw it towards her. It hit her in the back of the legs, but it was too soft to do anything of real consequence, and she merely brushed the attack off with a scowl. It was a short distance to the kitchen table. Lizzie managed to get there easily enough, slapping a hand over the wood. Mom moved just before Lizzie could bump into her. With an exasperated sigh, she resumed her work. I win again. You didn't win because you were racing by yourself. No, I told you we were both racing. You're just too slow. I wasn't racing and you know it. That sounds like something a rotten egg would say. Lizzie grinned, her hands on her hips, then looked over to your shoulder. Cove, you can be the tiebreaker. Was that a real race that I totally won? You blinked. You hadn't noticed what he had been doing during this little event, which wasn't much. You spotted Cove still on the floor. His legs were crossed beneath him, the arm with the cast resting on his lap. He looked at the two of you with a slight frown. It felt sort of strange to see him still here so late. Tonight, Cove had come to your house for a sleepover. Your moms and his dad had planned it a few days ago. You weren't surprised. You were the one who had asked your moms about it. Excited when your moms told you their idea. There was so much to do. Made you quite nervous. I'm gonna say I asked. They had told you they would ask Mr. Holden. You looked forward to it since the moment you found out he agreed. And you even helped Mom search the storage room for a sleeping bag and extra bedding to prepare for his visit. Cove pursed his lips at Lizzie's question, but he didn't respond. Maybe he was planning on ignoring her? Not that Lizzie would make it easy. This wasn't the first time she had asked him to be the referee for one of her sudden races. Well, did I win or what?
No.
No. What? I don't think you won. How come? It's not my fault Ollie's slow. Cheating's cheating, and cheaters never win. You always pick their side. Cove snuck a shy peek at you before answering her. I pick them and they pick me. You're a couple of rotten eggs then. That's enough. Nobody here is a loser or rotten egg. You're each farm fresh. Which is a sentence I never thought I'd say. Now listen to Mom and come sit at the table for dinner, all three of you. You and Lizzie obeyed, sitting across from each other at the edge of the table. Lizzie blew a raspberry at you and Mom turned her back. Your parents brought the last of the food, and they took their seats further down the table instead of sitting right next to you and Lizzie. Only Cove was left out. He had stood up from his spot on the floor, but he hadn't made a move towards the kitchen. Cove, you can sit too. Slowly, he eyed the first seats that were left. Thanks to the new seating arrangement your parents chose, one free chair was beside you, another next to Lizzie, and the last two were on the other side of where your moms were sitting. Sit next to me. You can sit anywhere you want to. You stay quiet. I'm gonna say he can sit wherever he wants. Cove's gaze met your black eyes. Briefly, he grinned back. He walked over, pulled out the chair next to yours, and sat down. You were glad he wanted to sit with you. He just needed to know it was okay. Now that everyone was situated, Mommy began to pass out plates.
Okay.
Dig in, kids. I cooked a little bit of everything for dinner tonight. Be sure not to avoid all the veggies. Yeah, Mom. Each person at the table served themselves except for one. Cove hesitated again. He fidgeted with his hands clamped on the top of his knees. He didn't seem very comfortable doing stuff in someone else's house. One dish seemed to have his eye, at least. That's pineapple chicken. Want to try some? Not really, sorry. By then your moms had noted that Cove still had nothing on his plate as well. You don't like any of the food, honey? Maybe he hasn't tried Hawaiian food before. He hasn't? Wow. Please don't talk with your mouth full, Lizzie. Lizzie swallowed the bite she was eating, then she spoke again. You should try it now. She turned to Cove dramatically. Unless you want to shrink. That's what happens if you miss a meal. Elizabeth, that's not true, and you know that. Cove squirmed under all the attention. He fidgeted with a fork between his fingers. I've had some things, just not any of this. Oh shoot, I knew I should have asked your dad what your favorite foods were. It's alright, Lonnie. Maybe he'll find a new favorite today. You weren't so sure about that. Cove didn't look like he was going to be trying the food anytime soon. Let your mom's handle. I think you would like pineapple chicken. It's yummy. Give me your plate. You should try something new. I'm gonna say I think he would like pineapple chicken. He ultimately trusted your judgment. At your suggestion, Cove carefully spooned rice and chicken onto the plate. You saw that he took more of the grilled pineapple than any of the vegetables. You nodded pleased and your moms let it slide. At first, Cove poked at the food. Clearly, he was apprehensive to eat something new, but he took a few exploratory bites. It's good, huh, isn't it? You don't have to keep asking. He still speared more meat with his fork and ate it, chewing thoughtfully. It's not bad. Mommy grinned at his words, satisfied even though it wasn't exactly a glowing commendation. Lizzie wasn't as mollified. You're so weird. Don't be mean to your friend. We're not friends. Oh. Mommy floundered in the face of Cove's blunt honesty. You weren't surprised by Cove's declaration. The more you got to know him, the more you realized he wasn't the type of kid to keep his opinions to himself. She wasn't easy to get along with all the time, though Cove didn't make much of an effort either. You hoped Cove thought of you as a friend. The two of you were friends, right? Wondered how he felt about you. That still made you nervous about your own relationship. At least the two of you were definitely friends. I'm gonna say this one. You never asked before, but that's what it felt like to you. When you gave Cove a look, he returned a small smile, and that made you feel a little better, even though you were still unsure. Your mommy looked at Mom and only got a shrug. Elizabeth, don't call someone weird. There's no such thing as weird person and a non-weird person. There's just different perspectives. It's not a nice thing to say to someone, anyone, but Pam. Mom tried to whisper exclusively to Mom. Her attempt to make it audible over the sounds of clanking silverware meant you caught the quiet words anyway. They're not friends. He said so. As parents, we can only try, and sometimes we fail. Not all kids will be thick as thieves. Now, less talking and more eating, kids. You need to clean up and start winding down for bed soon. But, Mom... No buts, we've talked about this. Your bedtime will be moved back in a few years. For now, you don't get to stay up late. Lizzie sulked, muttering under her breath about how it wasn't right. Laughed at Mom's phrasing, groaned about it as well, stayed quiet, and finished her meal. We groaned. It seemed way too early to go to sleep. The sooner you sleep, the sooner a brand new day will be here. I think that's pretty exciting. We weren't sure you agreed. The rest of dinner passed by uneventfully. Cove was silent for most of it, even when you nudged him and tried to get him to talk. All too soon, the table was cleared, the games in the living room were put away, and you were all steered to your bedrooms. Mom finished tucking you in and kissed your brow just as Mommy poked her head in the room. All ready for lights off, you two? You were lying comfortably in your bed, the blanket hiked up under your armpits. You could kick it off later if it got too hot. Mom had set up the sleeping bag on the floor for Cove, just beside your bed. He had already wriggled inside. You nodded for the both of you in response to Mommy's question. Perfect. I'll go say goodnight to Lizzie then. Mom tweaked your nose, chuckled when you squawked in annoyance, and left. Mommy took her place, sitting on the edge of your bed. Sweet dreams, sweetie. She pressed a soft kiss on your forehead. You giggled as strands of her hair fell forward and tickled you. Mommy smiled down affectionately at you, then moved her attention to Cove, who watched from his spot on the floor. You need anything before falling asleep, honey? What does your dad do? Sometimes he picks me up and lifts me really high, and he shakes his hands like he's going to let go, but he catches me again. He keeps doing that until sometimes he does drop me on my bed, or another time he lowers me down and we pretend like I'm crashing. He just... What? Cove had become pretty excited when talking about the nightly ritual he and his dad shared. He seemed to realize how animated he was and bashfully quieted. I don't want to do that here. Oh, I'll have fun, though. I think you're right that it might not be a good idea to do that tonight. The sleeping bag might not be as soft enough as a landing. If there's anything else, you can always ask me or Ollie's other mom. But I'm the nicer one, just don't tell her that. She laughed good-naturedly and stood up. Sleep well, Cove. Good night. Leaning against the door jamb, she rested a hand on the light switch and looked to you. Good night, sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite. With a last smile, Mommy turned off the lights and stepped out, closing the bedroom door behind her. You listened to her footsteps fade as she walked down the hallway. But even as the sound vanished, your eyes stayed open. It was so exciting to have Cove spending the night. You were happy that Cove was spending the night, but you couldn't shake the conversation from earlier at the dinner table. Cove had said he and Lizzie weren't friends, but that wasn't the part that was bothering you. You couldn't stop from wondering what he really thought about you. I asked. Cove? Yeah? Are we friends? Cove didn't speak for a few moments, and you wondered if you startled him with the question. The longer the silence stretched, the more uneasy you felt about the impending answer. Do you think we're friends? You wrinkled your nose at the question being redirected back at you. The way Cove had asked it made you think that maybe he hadn't even questioned it before, and now more than ever you wondered if you should have kept quiet instead. Best friends? I don't know, not really. You decide. I say yes. As soon as the words left your mouth, you knew they were true. Okay. You could only make out Cove's outline in his sleeping bag, but you could hear the smile in his voice anyway, and it felt good to have an answer to the question burning in your mind. The two of you were officially friends. You started when Cove sighed deeply. You turned your head to look in his direction. In the dark, you could only see a faint outline of a lump under the covers. Cove? What's wrong? Could you be quieter? Stop that. What is happening? What's wrong? Can't sleep. Why not? He shifted, or at least he thought he did. You couldn't see anything since your eyes were still adjusting to the dark, but you heard his sleeping bag rustle. I want to be in my bed. Oh. Cove sat up. Your eyes had gotten used to the low-level light, so you could see him better. He got out of the sleeping bag, wobbled towards your side table, and pulled open the top drawer. What is it? Getting my glasses. You sat up too, watching as he reached inside. He paused for a second, then pulled his hand out. Instead of his glasses, though, he was holding a book. Cove turned it around in his hands, trying to figure out the proper orientation for it. You knew even without reading the title which one it was. That was one of your moms would read to you. It was special. Be careful, that's mine. I thought you were looking for your glasses. What are you doing? I thought you were looking for glasses. I was. Then I felt this. It looks cool. The compliment he afforded your special book had you grinning, your confusion forgotten. It is really cool. Oh yeah? What is it about? It's a story about a squire who wants to become a knight and there's magic. Does it have mermaids? No, but... Love main character because the squire's really brave and funny. Cool pictures. Some of them even take up a whole page. Mommy reads it to me. She uses different voices for the characters. There's a dragon in it and crazy things happen. The squire tries to kill her because the king wants the dragon dead, so they have to have this fight. But the squire finds out the dragon's really nice. They decide they don't want to fight her after all, so the two of them become friends instead. Cove looked excited by your words. He flipped the book over and focused at the backside summary. He must be pretty interested. You were reminded of the hours you'd spent hearing the tales. No matter how many times you read it or had it read to you, you were still entertained by the story and pictures inside. Glanced out the window. The moon was high in the sky. Definitely the time when you were supposed to be asleep, but you couldn't keep staying up. I want to read the book with Cove. You climbed out of bed and padded over your side table. You opened it and rummaged around, pushing aside stuffed toys and crayons. Cove called out to you in a confused whisper. What are you doing? You'll see. You let out a quiet cry of victory when you found what you were looking for. You jumped back to the bed before any hidden boogeyman could catch you unaware. Cove continued to watch as you wiggled your way beneath the blanket you discarded earlier. You pulled it up over your head. What? Come on, check it out. Bring the book, too. After a minute, the bed dipped as Cove got onto it. Then the blanket shifted. You fiddled with the flashlight in your grip, feeling for the switch. Oh, Jesus. With a click, the small space flooded with a bright light. Cove sputtered, putting a hand up to shield himself from the beam. Look at somewhere else. Sorry. You tilted the flashlight so it was shining down towards the floor of your blanket cave and away from Cove's sensitive eyes. Is that better? Yeah. Now we can read, and my moms won't know. I do this all the time. I've never tried something like this before. I say I do it all the time. When Mom or Mommy check on me, I have to hide everything under the blanket, but I haven't been caught before. Do you want to try? Cove nodded, pleased by the straightforward response. He placed the book between you and flipped it open to the first page. Meanwhile, he lay down on his belly and shuffled closer, picking up the flashlight to shine it on the pages. His face was illuminated with a warm glow. You mirrored his position, leaning in so you could see the book better. Your foreheads nearly brushed until you shuffled back a comfortable distance. You wanted the story to be narrated. You thought it was best to take turns reading the book silently. You flipped through the pages to show Cove cool pictures. You narrate. You loved it when Mommy read it to you. Why not read it as loud as you dared this time of night? You didn't even need to study the page for long. There was once a squire who dreamed of knighthood. All they wanted was to do good. Cove was taken aback when he began to recite the words by heart. You even pronounced knighthood properly, a word which you had given you grief in the past. His reaction encouraged you to keep going. Soon you got to an exciting part, the squire and the dragon's first meet. The squire walked up to the fearsome dragon with their burrowed sword in one hand and a torch in the other. Her red scales danced in the light like flickering flames. Did you say the dragon's lines? Do you need to get your glasses? No, my head hurts if I don't wear my glasses for a while. I can kind of see things alright, but I don't know any voices. It's okay, it's fun anyway. Let me just... Cove read the page, his mouth moving silently with the words. Eventually he nodded to himself and spoke them out loud. Who goes there? Roared the dragon. Who dares enter my cave? It was your turn. You went into the squire's famous speech. The next time you looked up from the page, your gaze landed right on Cove. His eyes were following the text, a soft smile lighting up his features. A lock of his hair fell into his field of vision, but he gave it no notice. He was lost in the story. You started when Cove caught you watching him. He raised a questioning eyebrow. What? Nothing. Cove shot you a strange look, but he went back to the book. You did too, even as your eyelids started to droop. When your eyes opened again, your bedroom was pitch black and silent. Your head was smushed in your pillow, your pajamas were sticking to you, and your mouth was dry. Slowly, you raised yourself onto your elbows, you yawned, and the back of your throat was twinging as you did so. You rolled onto your side and sat up in bed, planning on getting water from the kitchen when you saw a dark shape towering above you. You froze, and you remembered you weren't alone in your room tonight. Cove, that you? Yeah. You shifted and felt something cylindrical press against your thigh. You fumbled for it, the familiar weight of the flashlight pressed onto your palm. You turned it on. Cove blinked at you, looking exhausted. He was in his normal clothes again, shoes and everything. His pajama pants were left on the floor abandoned. His sleeping bag was in a similar state. What is it? Can't sleep. I keep waking up. Did you have a bad dream? He shook his head from side to side. No, just can't sleep. It's weird here. You frowned. You helped your moms redecorate it only a few months back. I like my room. It's not that it's bad, I just always sleep in my bed in my room. That made things a little clearer. It wasn't anything that you'd done. Cove couldn't sleep in a new place. He wondered how long it took for Cove's bedroom in his new house to not be weird to him. Probably a while. I'm gonna go. What? That shook off the last of your drowsiness. He was going to walk outside back to his house? At this time of night, all by himself? He noted your shocked expression and looked at you with resolve. My dad will let me in, and I've gone outside late before, and I have to go. You don't have to. It wouldn't even be a sleepover if Cove left in the middle of the night. It was called a sleepover for a reason. Cove looked frustrated, though you got the feeling it wasn't at you specifically. Yes, I do. You were at a stalemate. Frowning to yourself, you studied his sleeping bag. Was there a way you could make him more comfortable? If Cove didn't like how weird your room was, maybe he would feel better if he had something more familiar nearby? Oh! You went to your bed and grabbed your blanket, and you spread it over the floor beside Cove's sleeping bag. He watched as you did, blinking. You're sleeping on the floor? Yeah, next to you. Hopefully that'll help you sleep easier. Is that okay? Uh-huh. You spied a small smile playing on his lips. We could try it, but if it doesn't work, I want to go home still. I get it. You grabbed your pillow and a few plush toys for good measure as Cove picked up his pajama bottoms and folded them, then set them aside. You tossed the items in your hands onto the blanket, completing your task. The two of you stood and looked down at your handiwork. Are you going to change into your pajamas? No, I can sleep in this. There wasn't anything left to say. In unison, you both laid down side by side. Cove put his glasses aside and got into his sleeping bag. You made yourself as comfortable as you could wrapped in a fuzzy blanket. The floor was hard and unforgiving against your back. Not at all as comfy as your bed, but you didn't mind it much. You had fallen asleep on the floor before. What mattered was if it helped. You swiveled your head to observe him. Is it better? He poked the top of his face out of the sleeping bag and mumbled bashfully. Oh no, I have to sleep first. I can't tell if I can now. You couldn't help but be disappointed by the answer. Promise to wake me up if you want to go. Cove looked confused by the request, but he nodded anyway. Sure. He smiled. At least he wouldn't disappear without you knowing. You settled in for bed on the ground, closing your eyes and waiting for sleep to come. You wanted to give Cove a chance to get comfortable. Surprisingly, he decided to keep talking. This was my first sleepover, I guess. You opened your eyes to see him staring up at the ceiling. The seafoam hair spread out around his head like he had just gotten shocked. Really? I've had sleepovers before. Sometimes I'll go to a friend's house. Shiloh slept over a few times too, and other stuff. Cove remained quiet. The silence stretched between you, but it didn't feel awkward right now. You didn't feel the need to break it immediately. How was it? Or is it? It's not bad. I liked reading your book. You did? I kind of thought you weren't having fun. You didn't really say anything when we were eating. I didn't know what to say. Oh. Now you were the one who didn't know what to say. You just laid there, and so did Cove, for what felt like a long time. Hey, Cove. There was no answer. You leaned on your elbow to see Cove's eyes were closed, his lashes fanned over the apples of his cheeks. His chest raised and lowered with every inhale and exhale. He was fast asleep. You smiled to yourself. Good night. You rested on your back and closed your eyes. Soon enough, you were lulled to sleep by the gentle sound of Cove's breathing. The next morning, you were woken by the sound of Mom's voice and a soft shake on your shoulder. Ollie, wake up. It's time to get up and at 'em. The sun was peeking through your curtains, and you rubbed at your eyes as they adjusted to the new light. Is everything okay down there? You blinked at Mom for a moment, confused before remembering you had slept down on the floor next to Cove. He was just waking up yawning loudly. His hand lightly hit your face as he stretched out. When you moved away, you groaned a little at the pain in your shoulder from having slept on the hard ground. It definitely wasn't as comfortable as your cozy bed, that's for sure. Cove wasn't feeling good, so I stayed with him. You mumbled and glanced at Cove, who rubbed his eyes sleepily. He didn't say anything. Still, you were glad you had decided to stay the night instead. He had decided to stay the night. When you looked at Mom next, she was smiling at both of you. Mommy was standing in the doorway behind her, doing the same thing. Alright, kids, we'll be downstairs making breakfast. Don't take too long coming down. She said something to Mommy on her way out that made the two of them giggle. Did you sleep okay? You stood up and stretched your legs, watching Cove fumble with the bedside drawer and pull out his glasses. I think so. He had been able to relax when it was just the two of you in the night. Now that a new day had come, he gave the impression of feeling out of place again. But the smile on his face had a gentle light. Thanks, Ollie. You're welcome. Even if it couldn't be a perfect time, it was worth it. Cove didn't stay for breakfast. He really was ready to go at that point. Mommy called to make sure Mr. Holden was up before Cove went home. He gave you a small wave as he left, thanking your moms for letting him stay before he disappeared through the front door. He smiled at the sight. Cove's very first sleepover had come to an end. We're done with childhood. So I want to close out the summer. So we'll click and then the summer ended. Move to the next step. Are you sure? Yes. Oh, is it going to go straight into the thing? Well, I thought it was going to ask me the general question of like, how do you feel about Cove right now? But if it's going to just jump into the next area, I'm not going to go on. So we will see what happens next in the next episode. I'm going to save. Everyone's going to watch. Saving. Yes. Okay. We have saved and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye.